Monday. Monday. I'm working on my posture. I know it's shitty. It's because of I blame my car accident, but who knows if that's really the problem? Who knows? All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Let's see. YouTube is waking up. There's Rockfin. I think Rockfin won by a little bit. It's not a competition. But I think that Rockfin won by a little bit. I see. I always have to wait until it goes live, folks, because I don't have an on-site producer. It's just me, so I need to make sure everything logs on. And there's a little bit of a delay, but yeah. So we just kind of riff with it until it logs on and people start logging in here, showing up, checking in. What's up, everybody? But yeah, we're here. What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Good afternoon to all my East Coasters. Good morning to all my West Coasters. Good evening if you're in an evening time zone. And if you're in the future, Australia, New Zealand. Solve climate change for the rest of us. You've had an extra day of science. We're counting on you. No pressure. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to find all the articles and streamers and content creators you know and love. Because what do? They curate a list for you and they update it twice a day. And they just kind of arrange all the news for you so you can see what's going on in one convenient place. To learn more about them and to get involved with their Discord community, they're dancing over at the Discord. Go to independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. All right. Without further ado, my guest today. So we're going to talk about a number of things. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the stuff going on at the harbor. Let me bring her in first. Without further ado, she is a regular on this show. She works over at Status Quo. She also hosts the 34th District podcast. And her and I have a monthly project that we're still working out. Like, we're still getting it off the ground. But it's where we talk about political theory and philosophy, because we both have past lives as academics. And that podcast is called Academy Refugees. Please welcome Tina Desiree-Berg back to the show. What's up, Tina?
Hey, glad to be here on this kind of hazy June gloom Monday morning.
Yeah, it's a little bit gloomy here in Southern California, in my neck of the woods and in yours. The dogs are having a frickin' party. We can hear that, and that is okay. This is a pet-friendly show. Hypatia is, you got to bring Hypatia to the beach.
I do. She would love that.
It's great we didn't talk about this off air, and now we're talking about it on. Like, it's like on air we were talking about, or off air we were actually like talking about issues. Now we log on and I'm just like, when's Hypatia coming to the beach? like total opposite. But so here's where
friendly.
I know, and I just know she'll be so excited to get some like fun beach time in. But
yes,
so. Here, but this connects to my neighborhood of San Pedro. So one of the reasons I really wanted Tina to come on the show today is because we've been covering on Get Your News On with Ron all of the protest and political activity going on at different ports around the world. It's a worldwide thing at this point.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, it started first in Livorno, Italy, which
yes. About a year ago they had. Or a year ago.
Well, and more recently. Yeah, I was going to say, did they do something a year ago too? But yeah.
Well, no, 2014 was actually, I don't know. Have you discussed the 2014 active measures that were taken back then in Oakland and in Long Beach?
Oh, no. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, all right. So this goes back even further. Yeah. So a month ago, not a year ago, my brain is like.
Well, let's say what we're talking about first, because I didn't properly set it up. So we're talking about at different ports around the world, they are refusing to unload Israeli weapon ships because they know what the Israeli government is doing. They're brutalizing the Palestinian people, and they're saying, no, we're not going to load or unload these ships. You gotta go elsewhere. The first action, I believe, was in Livorno, Italy, about a month ago. Then there was another action in South Africa, I believe, somewhere in England. And I was talking about how, I live near the LA harbor. San Pedro is a lefty union town. I wonder if San Pedro's going to step in. They did, baby. They did. San Pedro had a harbor protest where they would not unload the ship as well. I unfortunately could not physically be there that day. I had work stuff going on. I could not be there. I was busy with the Jimmy Dore show. But Tina, you were able to be there. You were able to go cover it, and you did. And so we're gonna watch your video here in just a second. But first, What did you see? What happened? Walk people through it.
Yeah, let me backtrack a smidgen though, go through some of the history here because I think it's
Sure.
important. So, Block the Boat is part of the BDS movement, and it's not solely arms that they're after. They're after the unloading and loading up of all shipments. This is part of BDS. So Zim, which is the company that's being targeted, is like the 10th largest shipping company in the world. It's Israeli, so it's quite large. And in 2014, they were successfully able to block one of the Zim ships from unloading in Oakland. So then the ship went down to Long Beach. They blocked it from landing there. And it hadn't been back until recently. So, and it happened to coalesce with this action that Israel has taken against Gaza currently. So they ramped up the activists again. And the last like 12, 13 days, the Zim ship was floating around out in the harbor in Oakland and decided to leave because it couldn't dock there. And then, yes, you're correct. So a month ago, the action in Italy was related to arms. And then you mentioned something in London, which I think we should talk about. Separate action. I actually know one of the guys that was organizing that. His name is Ronnie Barkin. I interviewed him on Status Quo. If folks want to hear that interview, it's very eye-opening because he is both Israeli and Jewish, and he's not a Zionist. He's been a Palestinian rights activist for 10 plus years now.
Well,
So
I have a hard time trusting anybody who goes by Ronnie. Now that's just me. I need to work through this. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Some of the people who have known me like for the longest will call me that still.
yeah,
Like relative, because when I was a little kid, it's like, they'd call me Ronnie.
right.
But yeah, I go by Ron, but Ronnie's cool. I mean, I dig Ronnie. Ronnie's good.
I'm
It's
gonna start calling Ronnie Ron.
well, no, he might want to go by Ronnie. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I'm kidding of it, but like,
I actually don't know. I've never asked him that. Sometimes people just acquire nicknames publicly and you just never even ask them if they prefer one or the other. It might be the case that he prefers Ron. I don't know.
I'd imagine. I mean, I'm assuming this is a grown man, and so
Yes.
I'd imagine if he doesn't want to go by Ronnie, he would have established that by now.
Probably.
I'd imagine
Yes,
either
he's
okay with it.
He's not a withering wallflower at all. Obviously, this guy he's Israeli, he's Jewish, he's a Palestinian rights activist. So you can deduce from that he is a very strong individual, has zero problems expressing his opinions, and is there for the fight.
Yeah. So if he didn't want to be Ronnie, he wouldn't be. But Ron. Now Ronald's you got to be a little skeptical of people who go. I was only called Ronald when I was in trouble. That was like I knew I wasn't. Whenever my mom would be like Ronald, that's when I knew I was in trouble.
Like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's the only time anyone ever called me Ronald. And people who decide to go by, Ronald Reagan. Let's right there.
Oh, well,
so
there you go.
I feel like some skepticism's a little bit necessary. Why do you got to be? Why do you got to be Ronald? Like, what are you trying to compensate for? That Ron, it's fine. One syllable, easy peasy. What, you think you need more than that? Ronnie, like, all right, you just like that. It's fun. All right. But Ronald, like, why? I mean, we get it. That's your name. Yeah. Now, if you were in Italy, Ronaldo, all right, I can get on board with that. Ronaldo, like, that's fun. But just Ronald, I don't know. McDonald, so even. Big corporatist, that Ronald McDonald. So Reagan, McDonald. We can be skeptical of the Ronalds, but Ron and Ronnie, all about uniting there. All right, so let's talk about the important information regarding this person as opposed to the name.
So Ronnie went up to a town outside of London in England. It's Elbit is the arms manufacturer there. It's the Israeli arms manufacturer. They have a facility there where they make weapons. So they were trying to shut Elbit down. They had a couple actions there. He was actually arrested. He spent 24 hours in jail. So did other of the activists. But their goal there was to shut down the manufacturing of the arms there and not have them shipped down to Palestine. So part of the whole entire protest movement, but a little bit separate from Block the Boat, because Block the Boat is really a BDS movement. They're trying to stop. They're trying to kick. They're taking a play from the South Africa apartheid playbook, basically. They're trying to kick them where it hurts financially. And a good way to do that is with a company that's that large and so important to the economic structure of the country. So the reason they're being effective, I think the big part of it is the fact you mentioned the unions, right? The unions have become involved. So SEIU here locally signed on to support in solidarity. The Longshore Workers Union, a couple of local ones that have different numbers. I think it's 10.
ILWU for
Yeah,
short.
signed on.
ILWU.
So when they get involved, now you have a situation where they're not going to unload the containers even if you get them on the dock. They're refusing to do that. So why even dock the boat, right? So they're going after getting more union solidarity involved. And I think it's important. And also a big part of what is being protested is Palestinian workers' rights. I don't know that a lot of folks understand or know that in the occupied West Bank, there are factories that are there that have been put there intentionally by Israeli companies because they get away with violating workers' rights. For a long time, there was zero application of the labor laws in occupied West Bank areas. The Israeli Supreme Court ruled that that could not be the case, that the labor laws needed to be applied. But I'm not clear that that's actually happening. It's hard to say. It would not surprise me if we found all kinds of violations. I'm actually positive that there probably is. Because what kind of oversight are you going to have? The illegal settlers aren't going to oversee that. The IDF isn't going to oversee that. And that on top of the fact that for these folks even to get from their homes to their jobs requires, 5 hours of security checks. I mean, it's just outrageous what's happening. So
this is going on in various places throughout the world now, which is encouraging to see. And so let's get Pedro specific then. What did you see in my neighborhood? Because by the time I was able to catch up with everybody, the action was over and everyone was drunk. So what happened? We'll talk about that later. But let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, we might have worked our way through that tasting menu. So San Pedro is important. I think all of the ports into California are obviously important. I think people need to think about the fact that California it kind of teeters between the 5th and 6th largest economy in the world, right? So a lot of shipping comes in to California that goes throughout the rest of the country as well. But when you can't land in Oakland and the ship leaves, so now the activists are on call, right? They're like, well, where is the ship headed? It's headed south. So is it going to go to San Pedro? Is it going to go to Long Beach? Is it going to go to more, what I would say is more fascist friendly San Diego? Yes, I just said that. Which would have been my choice.
Poor San Diego.
Right?
They're just trying to be a chill beach town, but all the old money Republicans came in.
Yeah, and plus you have you have a very strong Proud Boy presence down there. The police in San Diego, I think, are a little bit actually worse than the LAPD is, from what I've witnessed.
Really?
Yeah, wow. And in fact, not to get off topic, but they have gone in. My next podcast episode, and I'm doing also a video for Status Quo on this. But I went down and interviewed some of the activists that have had their houses ransacked by the FBI on warrants that are closed warrants where you can't see what they're looking for. And then they just give you a list of items.
Which shouldn't be legal, by the way. Which shouldn't
I think that is incredibly unconstitutional. And I did talk to an attorney about it. And she basically said, yes, you have to go in front of a judge and basically make the case that it's in the public's best interest to have a sealed warrant versus one where, the person can actually see what the issue is. And these were... I'm going off on a total. Sorry, you know me,
Pedro. Yeah, no, it's all good. But yeah, so Pedro. So the boat started heading south.
Yeah, so the boat did not show up that day. I did see Zim containers being moved around though behind the protests. Not sure what happened with those. I'd be curious to know. But so basically, they have a text message number now where they have activists on call. So if something. If they foresee that a boat's coming in and is going to try to dock, they send out a text message and all the activists run down to the port. So they're doing this particular thing with the text messaging in New York. They're doing it in San Pedro. Obviously, it's been very effective in Oakland. So they've got this pretty buttoned down and they've got a lot of support. And I think it's interesting also that SEIU, which actually has less of a connection than obviously the Longshore Workers Union, is very connected to what happens at the port. That's where their jobs are.
Yeah, that's where I mean they are everywhere in San Pedro. I mean, you see their banners everywhere. You see their buildings everywhere. In fact, where you and I, where we all went,
can see this. This is what the pamphlet. So they were trying to do an educational thing as well for the residents in the area, and people just driving by, etc. So they were handing out these brochures that explain why they're doing what they're doing, and it talks about a little bit of the history here. You know, hang on, and how you can be involved, etc. So I think I think the fact that the ship didn't come, is sort of tangential to the fact that they're really interested in educating people on what's going on, why they're doing what they're doing. And I think this is an important part of moving the Overton window in the United States, because for a long time you couldn't even discuss Israel and Palestine without, just getting destroyed, like automatically. If you had any criticism for the state of Israel, even if you're Jewish, like, believe me, they hated Jewish people saying this stuff even more. You would be, targeted as being anti-Semitic, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Has anyone ever called you, because you're Jewish, has anyone ever called you, really?
Absolutely. Yes,
wow.
Yes,
it's
1,000 times yes.
Well,
if
and
you
that's
talk to any leftist Jewish folks, they'll tell you, like, oh yes, absolutely yes, like, you're not allowed to criticize this. But this is very unhealthy, and in fact a lot of what's happening in Israel, in my opinion, has increased anti-Semitism for the diaspora. A lot of their actions. And why would you be okay with some of the stuff that's going on in Gaza? This is quite literally an open air prison. I mean, you cannot achieve justice for what happened in World War II by doing what we're doing there. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. This is not just, it's not right. It's not moral.
And we talked about this in our soon to be released Academy Refugees podcast, because our last topic, I guess we'll give people like a quick peek under the hood here. Our last topic was propaganda. And we'll be dropping that podcast soon, where we just kind of break down, what does propaganda actually mean? What is it actually? And how is it applied? And one of the applications of it is you just repeat something often enough until people just accept it as truth. And an example we used was, hey, you look at Israel, Palestine, where it's like, if you criticize the right-wing Israeli government, that's anti-Semitic. It isn't. But they repeat that so much that people just take it. Even still, I mean, we have come a long way. Those walls are starting to crumble, though, those rhetorical walls, which is great. But we still got a long way to go. I mean, there's still a long way to go. So,
it's honestly, Ron, it's kind of wild when you think about it. You mentioned that the right-wing government, like Likud, who is Netanyahu's party, which is, he's actually struggling right now, if you've been following the news on this. His party is not even the most right-wing in the country. There are parties that are to the right of that. I'd say the Home Party is absolutely fascist, right? Ultranationalists, the Kahanaists, Kosh Party, which was banned by the Israeli government. These guys are so far right and so vicious. One of their guys actually committed a mass shooting that killed a lot of Palestinians while they were worshiping in a mosque. They were banned from participating in the government until recently. And Netanyahu has welcomed them back into the coalition because he's trying to retain power. So there's like some really messed up stuff going on. And it's really puzzling to me that a leftist in the United States of America that would never in a million years accept some of the actions and beliefs of these right-wing parties, all of a sudden find themselves defending these folks just because they're in Israel. It just doesn't make any sense.
Why do you think that is?
Propaganda. I think they've been told to believe that if they do that, they're anti-Semitic. I think they believe that. And as good leftists, they don't want to be anti-Semitic, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, folks. No group is monolithic in its beliefs. No group is. No community is. So we have to get beyond that and understand that there's a rich diversity in opinions in every single community and culture. And Teflon coating any government from criticism simply because it's Jewish is not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Every community is capable of doing bad. Every community is capable of becoming something, as like I would say what's happening in Israel now is it's kind of a sick society that's very much engrossed in its military, background. Is very much engrossed in believing that, Arabs are the others, right? The othering that happens, where they become less than human. It makes it easier to do what you're doing. This is a form of ethnic cleansing, whether people want to accept that or not, but it is. When your goal is to only have a certain ethnicity inside the state. It's absolutely an ethno state, and that's what's happening. And it doesn't help anybody to try to pretend that that's not the case, in my opinion.
Well, and also whenever somebody, tries to make the anti-Semitic claim now, and again, this is like a sign of, tides are shifting, and these rhetorical walls are being knocked down. You can find footage upon footage upon footage, especially if you're just looking on Twitter, of Jewish people in the United
Yeah.
States, of Jewish people in Israel marching for Palestinian
Oh,
rights
absolutely.
and,
Jewish
and
voice for
saying,
peace. Yeah.
yeah, and saying, not only is this morally repulsive, but they're also saying we are so disgusted that this is being done in our name.
Hmm.
Stop it. And so you can just point to that.
Hmm. No,
So
100%. 100%.
well, so let's go to your coverage here in Pedro to
Okay.
stick on what's going on the harbor. You got some coverage here. We're gonna take a look see. So how long did the whole action last before I play the video here?
Yeah, so that was just the edited clip I gave you was pretty short, I suppose. It went on for about an hour and a half. It remained very peaceful. We had a small police presence for a little bit of time, and then the police left. Strangely enough, the harbor division, the LAPD harbor division, was directly across the street. But there's no signage on that building, so I wasn't sure that the protesters realized that they were setting up shop across the street from from the police station, which I was like, okay, that could be either good or bad. Depending on how things go.
Well, I
But
feel like the harbor division, they're not really, I mean, they're on the water for the most
they're on
part.
the
Like they're not really looking to, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like they're not really worried about what people are doing on the docks.
I think they could be. I think they could
Oh
be.
yeah, you're probably right. I mean, yeah, I'm
I mean,
sure.
police are police, right?
Police
They're
are,
there to
yeah,
protect
no, police are police.
private property. So there's containers moving back and forth. And, here's the interesting thing would be to find out what exactly is in all these various containers. I did ask them about if they were targeting specific things like arms, like they did in Italy, and no, they're just targeting all the shipping coming in and off the Zim ships. But I'd be curious to know, what precisely is being moved around here. It's hard to say.
So let's just kind of take a look at what was going on. So there's the hashtag block the boat. We're
Yeah.
just gonna watch a little bit of this.
Zionism has got to go! Hey, ho, Zionism has got to go! The Block the Boat campaign seeks to undermine the economic pipeline that allows the occupation in Palestine to continue, while also forging connections between the Palestinian struggle and worker struggles worldwide. We recognize worker exploitation to be a Palestinian cause, just as it is a global cause. And it is our hope that this campaign will help strengthen not only the movement for Palestinian liberation, but also the workers' movements globally.
So they brought up the workers' rights issue that you brought up.
Yeah, because I think that's a big part of it. One of the things that was most egregious about South African apartheid was that as well, right? I mean, so it's not just the illegal settlements. It's not just that the Palestinian people in the occupied West Bank and Gaza are tried under military law. They're not tried under Israeli law. It's not just that their passports say that people are either Jewish or Arab and not Israeli, because saying they're Israeli would mean that, well, Israeli, that's uniform, right? It's both an ethnicity and where we are in this country, right? So there's it's like death by a million cuts, right? But one of the most egregious thing that is common with South Africa is the way that they don't give credence to workers' rights in the West Occupied Bank, and they have a lot of factories there. So, for example, if you go and you buy hummus, I think Sabra might have a facility there. It's being manufactured in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinians that work in these factories aren't treated the same, obviously. And, it's a combination of getting paid less, a combination of having to go through 5-hour checkpoints just to get to their place of work from their home because of the security measures, because you literally have these illegal settlements that are dispersed in a way where you have to pass through these security checkpoints and they have roads that are only for Jewish folks, roads that are everybody else. So, I mean, it's, it's really rough. And I don't see how, honestly, I don't see how any Jewish person can be okay with this stuff. I just don't. I mean, but again, there's that variety of opinion that exists. And there are definitely a lot of right-wing Jewish folks, even though that seems sort of counterintuitive. If you are, somebody that practices Judaism, it seems counterintuitive.
So to put a period on it, the ships did not show up because they knew that protesters were waiting in Pedro.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's part of the situation. So what's interesting is after the 2014, I think we talked about this briefly, after the 2014 action, it's been all of this time forward before Zim came back to Oakland. Think about that, years now, right? So this was the first time. I don't know why they decided to do this now for whatever reason. I'd be curious to find out.
Probably because of all the stuff that's going on over there right now, right? I mean,
I would guess, yeah. I mean, I'd like to get a comment from Zim shipping on what they're thinking, but so they've avoided Oakland all this time.
That's your next assignment.
That's my.
Yeah. You gotta reach out to Zim.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We sent them an email. They won't.
Oh, really? They won't respond? Did you get
Hard
like
to
one
say.
of those
Like you go onto the website. Yeah, exactly. General website, email address. I'm sure it's going to take much more than that. And it really is probably not in their best interest. It's going to take.
Put Mr. Zim on.
Me.
I want the guy. The Zim behind the curtain.
Yeah. And again, there's so many parts of this that are complex and so many parts of this that are just absolutely simple, right? The complex parts have to do with the fact that no community is monolithic in their beliefs, right? And also, I don't think it's, I think in order to understand a lot of this, people should realize that when Israeli Jewish folks say that they have fear over what could happen to them, that is actually a sincere thing. Like, please don't ever discount that. I mean, it might sound like incredulous to some folks to hear that, right? But they do worry. I mean, you're talking about folks that have been prosecuted their whole lives. They've probably lost family members in the Holocaust. My background is my Jewish side, my grandfather's side. My great grandparents were killed in the Holocaust. He married a shiksa, Swedish gal, so I'm a mix. But that fear is very much real. Do I think that you have security the way you've set up a Zionist state that's basically colonial apartheid? I do not. I think it was just not smart, and also not tenable and morally wrong. I mean, we can get into all those discussions, but it is a complex psyche that is surrounding this conversation, which I think is why it's been so tough to really do anything about it. Do you know what I'm saying?
So, well, let's switch gears, because there's a couple other headlines I got for you today.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them, shout out to a friend of the show and co-host of the Dollop podcast, a very funny comedian, Gareth Reynolds. This was his tweet that I really liked. So we'll start here with this. This is our chance to get him off Earth forever. Don't blow this. The headline, Jeff Bezos and his brother are going to space. Bezos announced they would be on board when his rocket company, Blue Origin, launches its first human space flight next month. So Bezos is going to space. Congratulations, USA. We have made the opposite of Star Trek a reality. We have made the dystopian opposite of Star Trek a reality. Jeff Bezos, about to be a trillionaire, he's going to space. And his company is one of the biggest polluters on the freaking planet.
Yeah.
All right. Are you excited for him? Are you happy?
This is so dystopian. On the funny level, it's like, yeah, shoot that guy into outer space and hope he never comes back. But on the flip side, you have to sort of like have this thought about, well, are rich people like the trillionaires, the plutonymy, are they really looking at exploiting outer space now because they know that they've screwed up the planet so badly? So they don't have to worry about whatever, effects that we are going to continue to get worse under global warming. So I'm just going to go to outer space now. I'm wealthy. All the other wealthy elites are going to come with me. We're going to set up, a whole new planet or a space station or whatever else. And then all the peasants on Earth, they can, suffer the consequences of our exploitation.
And the best part is the peasants on Earth.
It's like a sci-fi movie.
Oh, it totally is. Well, the best part is the peasants on Earth are paying for it.
Yeah,
Jeff Bezos,
exactly.
He just got a bunch of money again from the government. He just got a bunch of money. and he bought like what it was like MGM that he bought or something like that.
Yeah.
He bought
yeah.
like the James
Amazon
Bond
Prime
catalog and stuff like that. That's what he did with the money that was handed to him. Again, one of the richest guys in the world. Government hands him, I forget the number, but it was billions. He goes and buys MGM and the James Bond catalog with it, and now he's literally going to space. He's just having his own playground. I bought a movie studio and I'm going to space with the billions that I got. Well, people are housing insecure, food insecure, living wages still not a reality, and this dude buying movie studios, going to space by money that he was just handed that he does not need, doesn't pay any taxes.
Dystopian.
You couldn't write this. You couldn't pitch this as a script. Like you couldn't, like, I mean, truth has become stranger than fiction years ago. And this is, I mean, we are not a country. The United States is not a country. We are a corporation with state lines. Our government is nothing more than a corporate coup. I guess I am definitionally at this point an abolitionist. I think it shouldn't exist anymore. I think we need to end the Congress. We need to end the Senate. We need to abolish the presidency. And we'd be better off just having a people's legislature and just having someone in charge of the administrative end of it. And that person is drafted every 4 years. They are drafted, and it is the last job you ever want to get. I mean, I think we would be better off.
That's very Plato of you, by the way.
Well, wasn't it Socrates? That was kind of more for. Wasn't it Socrates? Because I'm also against. I don't think you should.
The Republic. Yeah. So it's Socrates and Plato's Republic. Yeah. I mean,
okay. I don't agree with everything in that book. Just put it out there now. There's a lot of messed up stuff in that book.
There is. But his point being that the philosopher kings are the ones that make the best politicians are basically the ones that don't want the job because they're not pursuing financial wealth. They're not pursuing fame. Right. So I'm just saying and he's right on that. I will grant. We should maybe do an Academy Refugees on the Republic.
Oh, we totally should, because I'm also like, and I know not everyone agrees with me on this, and I'm fine with that, but I don't think you should be allowed to nominate yourself. Like, I don't think you should declare yourself a candidate. I think everybody, no matter what the office, should be recruited. I do believe that. I'm
gonna mull that around in my brain. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that's a valid point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people and I totally get it. And that being said, I mean, I have plenty of people I know and respect who have chosen to run for office, and I support some local candidates and I want to see them do well. And I've even given them money I'll give money to local. I won't give money to state or federal, but I will give money to local. I'm not, I get it that that's not the world we live in, but I don't think you should be able to be like, I'm going to run. Like, I think someone should have to nominate you, and there should be some rules around it. Otherwise we'll just have Wall Street nominating everybody. But I do think like you should be
that would
recruited.
defeat the purpose. But that
would totally defeat the purpose. It would just all be done in a wine cave.
It will all be done in a wine cave, right? I mean, the folks that are attracted to politics now that are successful generally have a lot of money behind them. Either it's their own, and a lot of the cases it's both their own, and then the dark money contributions. But the way our system is set up is it's obviously wired to be more. You're going to be more successful if you have money backing you, and it's a problem. We lose so many great candidates in our primaries simply because they don't have the funding to get through the primary.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, what Hypatia agrees. Hypatia is she's like the modern day Diogenes. Yeah. And she's agreeing. She's like, hell yeah.
She's a modern day.
Oh, by the way, whenever I bring this up, usually somebody threatens. Maybe threatens is a bit strong, but somebody threatens to nominate me, to recruit me to run for office.
I would totally nominate you.
It'd just to put a stop to that.
I just want to film that. Is it wrong that I just want to film that?
Well, I'm just going to put a stop to that right now. I'm against the concept of private property. There, I've just guaranteed I will lose. Don't recruit me. Guaranteed
hang on. But that sort of requires a discussion about the difference between personal private property and private property. I don't think a lot of people know there's.
I just got the soundbite I needed. I will never win anything now because that soundbite exists. So don't recruit me
Okay.
unless you just want to lose. If you're like, hey, there's this election, I really want to lose, I'll recruit Ron. Be like, well, I guess I can lose as much as the next person. I guess I'll get Twitter verified. But otherwise, I just ended it. I just ended it.
No, I don't think you did. But
that's another concept for an episode, though. Like
there are a bunch of Zoomers that are going to listen to that and be like, "I'm voting for that guy."
Well,
they're going to be like, "That guy understands Marx."
Well, and a lot of times when you say that, a lot of people don't understand what you mean, to the point where I have had friends who have bought condos and have apologized to me, and I'm like,
which makes no sense.
That doesn't make I'm like, that's not what I mean when I say that. What I mean,
personal property. You're allowed to have a house.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I mean, and
a toothbrush. You can have a toothbrush.
Well, no, you're in possession of it. Like what I'm saying is, right. You're in possession of that. That's not what you mean when you say you're against the concept of private property. That's not what you mean. I don't mean this isn't my shirt. It's the world shirt. No, this is my shirt. No. That's my guitar over there. Right. This is that's
your personal property. Your house is your personal property.
And so
private property is different.
Housing becomes personal property. Now, if I was starting a society from scratch, I wouldn't have housing as personal property. You'd be in possession of it. You wouldn't.
Okay, now you just lost your election.
I know, and I'm thrilled about it. I'm glad. But again, I realize I don't live in that society. Like I have a friend, because I actually had this discussion where I'm
messing with you, Ron. I have to mess.
No. Tina, I'm trying to lose. Listen, Well, no, but seriously though, I had a conversation with a friend where I was actually, because again, I'm saying this is a principle. If I was starting a society from scratch, I realize that's not the society I live in. No. And when people say like, well, how can you imagine that? Like, well, because you wouldn't live in a society. It'd be like the equivalent of saying like, well, whose ocean is that? Well, that's nobody's ocean. That's the ocean.
It's everybody's ocean.
Whose sand is that? Well, it's everybody's. Yeah. We could live in a society where housing is treated the same way, where you're in possession of it. You're in possession of this house. It's where you live, but none of us own it at the end of the day. We just have a housing system where everyone pays their fair share based on their need. And that's how housing is run. It's hard to imagine that because we don't live in that society. And I know we never will in my lifetime. So I had a conversation.
Okay, so that's sort of what I was. Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this, because that's always the flip side of all of these sort of ideals. Like they all sound great. And then there's always some asshole somewhere that's going to screw it up for everybody because he's going to do something super assholey, right?
Sure.
So how do you handle that? I think that's always the eternal philosophical debate in this area, right? How do you have to sort of legislate to the lowest common denominator because it's the lowest common denominator, like Joe Manchin. I'm going there. Like,
yeah, well, we're going to go there next.
Those guys end up controlling and manipulating more power simply because of their willingness to do these assholey kind of things. Also, we have a super chat that we should talk about. I'm just seeing.
Yeah.
Guitar.
All right. Well, we'll get to. Should we go there now? Usually, I go to the chat
I'm like
at the
taking
end.
over your show now.
I can alter the course of events for you, Tina. I don't do it for many folks, but for you, I will just alter the show completely. But to answer to apply it to the contemporary sense, like getting into like the topic itself, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who has the same philosophy on private property that I do. And he said like, well, I will never, like he does apply it in the contemporary sense. I don't. So what he said is, and like we had a discussion about this, and I actually think I'm bringing him around to my perspective on it. Because he's like, well, I will always be a renter because I'm so philosophically against the idea of private property. I can never justify. And I'm like, well, wait a second.
Interesting.
Well, here's my response to that, because I actually think that's not really the right perspective to have on it, even if you have that.
I agree with you, by the way.
Which I do.
Agree with you, but
because in the society we live in, even though I am a renter, I'm still participating in the structure, structure that I am in principle against. And I'm doing that because, well, my alternative is not having a home. Like, so it's like, I'm sorry, I need to. So I'm paying a landlord, right? Like I'm a renter.
Yeah. So you're being exploited by the landlord. That's not necessarily to
that's
your
not
benefit
better. That's not better. So if
Oh, it's
anything,
definitely not better, yeah.
if you can have, if you can be in possession of your property and buy a house or buy a condo, you're actually better off as far as like if you
Yeah.
entertain the idea that private property shouldn't be a thing. And I know that sounds strange where it's like if you have private property, you're better off if you're against
Makes
private
sense.
property. It makes sense when you unpack it. When you say it on the surface level, it sounds completely like what? But when you explain it, it does make perfect sense because it's like, well, you're against the predatory housing market. That's where the problem is. I'm not against people being in a house. I'm against a predatory housing market that has gotten to this point. So if I could not participate in it at all by not paying a landlord, like we'd all be better. You're better off.
100%.
Like you're a good thing. So the person who buys
and
like
actually,
land
I
and
would
has a
say
farm,
it frees up. It also frees up capital that you might have to help others. Like,
sure,
there's not enough people helping other people out there. Mutual aid needs to be expanded in so many areas. So yeah, I mean, whether we like it or not, we live in a capitalist country that is not only a capitalist political economy, but I would say the entire government system is focused on being capitalist. Like it's
totally
really extreme.
Well, I think the best.
Other countries have separate government systems to political economies, right? Not every other country, but generally you could see like Sweden. Yeah. Ours, it's like supervened on like we are just capitalist through and through, which is why we have so many societal ills stemming from all of the socioeconomic problems. So many things that we see happening could be so easily rectified if there wasn't such severe income inequality. Like it's really that simple.
Totally. Well, I think like the best like summary to kind of just sort of live your life is when people say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, they're right. That is true. We're all like, none of us are perfect. We're all guilty to some extent. However, that's not an excuse to do nothing.
Right.
That's the balance where it's like, yes, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. I am not perfect. You are not perfect. Nobody is perfect. And you got to participate to some degree. But
you have no option. I mean, so you have to make the best choices.
But trying your best is still a worthy call. And, you can't use that. Well, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, so I'm just not going to try at all. I'm not going to make any effort whatsoever. No, it's good to make an effort. There comes a point where, like, if your effort is so dogmatic and extreme, it becomes counterproductive. But making an effort, there's nothing wrong. Like that's a good thing. You should make an effort. You should make an effort to recycle, to compost, to, avoid something like Amazon to the best of your ability. I understand that's not really always possible, especially if you live in some rural area where like there's really nothing around you and you're in a food desert and whatever else. Maybe you have to use Amazon some. Okay, but here's the flip side though. It's about doing your best with the circumstances that you're in. That person in the rural area, in this, for instance, they can do something I can't do. They can grow food. I live in a very urban area. I don't have any space where I could grow food or anything like that. What I can do is participate in my community urban gardens, which I do. I bring my compost to them. I make small, donations when I can. I always buy my food from them. I get my crops from them at the farmer's market. I can do that. That rural person, they might not be able to avoid something like Amazon as easily as I can, but they can do other things that I can't do. They can grow food. They can compost. All these things that I can't do as an individual, but these are the things I can do as an individual. And if everyone's doing their best under their circumstance, that matters. That matters.
I agree.
But
anyway.
It's
sort of like a conversation about what's theoretical. We can have, these theoretical ideas about what ideally should happen, and then there's the reality of things. So there's a place for both of those things. We are human. What do you think about this notion that I was having a conversation the other day, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts on it, because I'm not sure I have a strong opinion in one direction or the other, because I see the point. I've always tried to avoid using Amazon, but somebody was pointing out to me the other day that in some instances, boycotting companies also harms people that have employment there, and that we should be maybe not boycotting the companies, but fighting harder to help them unionize and what have you. I hadn't really thought about that. I guess in some areas, like the reality is maybe that could have been way effective 40 years ago, but now that they've wiped out all of the mom and pop shops, along with Walmart, there's like some areas where that's where the jobs are, and there's really not much else, like, which is just awful to hear that, and it's tragic.
Well, I
but
think
it's
you got to
also,
do both. I think you got to do both. I think that, and again, like, I'm
yeah,
not going to say there's never a scenario where I won't use Amazon. There is that reality that they are responsible for so much commerce
yeah,
because
no,
they just have
100%. They infuriate
such
me.
right. And so when I can avoid them, I certainly do. But
Right.
there are
Like,
some
I'm not a Prime
instances.
member. I absolutely am
I'm
not a
I'm
Prime
not either. I don't have Prime, but there are certain. I mean, here's an example where I recently used Amazon. Sometimes when I'm able to, I will buy something for Streetwatch LA off of their wish
Oh,
list,
yeah.
and
Okay.
for the South Bay chapter where they do mutual aid for people in
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
and they have
Harbor City is a hotspot.
yeah, it totally is. And they're doing amazing work. They're doing amazing things. Like there's some really strong mutual aid in Pedro. Some of the folks involved with that have been on this show in the past. And, I try to help them when I can. And I will just buy something off of their wish list and then check in with one of their organizers, Danny, to make sure they got it. They use an Amazon wish list for ease sake. And so, like, I don't mess around. Like, I'm not like it's easy for everybody because you can just ship it straight to them, and then they get it.
Yeah, and they get
with
it
a click,
yeah.
and you just get them exactly what they need. So in a case like that, I'm not gonna like go to the mat to be like I have to avoid Amazon at all costs. Look, in a case like that, I think that the goodness of getting them what they need and the benefit of getting them what they need for the work they're doing outweighs what little I'm using Amazon in that case. So I'm not gonna like die on that hill of anti-Amazon when the good outweighs the bad in that particular case. So it's a matter of making the judgment call in each scenario. And but yeah, you have there is that reality that they are a juggernaut, and so if workers are treated better, I mean, it's like something like Costco. I mean, like. Costco does
is
better.
An interesting conversation. Costco
They're
does
better.
A hell of a lot better. They're way better time and time again. I mean, I was reading the average salary there is like $40K a year versus $15 an hour at Amazon. I mean, do the math on that. That is a massive difference. And they are able to provide full health care. So Costco is clearly a better company. There's no two ways about that. So
they're better, and none of these. I mean, none of these corporations are perfect. It's just. I mean, and
I don't know. Dan
that's
Price
the wrong way to put it.
Close
But
to perfect. I'm going to defend Dan Price. I will die on that hill. Dan Price is the CEO.
Oh, the
in
Seattle guy.
Yeah. So,
but Dan Price isn't Jeff Bezos. He's nowhere close.
Oh, he's the exact opposite of Jeff Bezos, which is why I will die on Dan Price hill.
I don't mean as far as principle, which yes, he is, but as far as power too. I'm just saying it's related, not like he's Amazon,
No,
well, yeah, it is related because it's
by design, right? We cannot have the damn prices in the world having too much power because that might actually empower workers to the extent where they're like pulling out the guillotines against Jeff Bezos, right? That's
right. But interestingly enough, if Jeff Bezos abided by the Dan Price model, first of all, he very well could be. He just wouldn't be on his way to be a trillionaire.
Still be a millionaire. But he would still be incredibly wealthy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's like you can empower workers.
Greed. It's just greed.
Oh, of course. I mean, no one becomes a billionaire ethically. It's impossible.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
And
people get screwed over.
Of that Wolf of Wall Street guy, what was his name? Greed is good guy. Yeah, no, greed is bad.
I don't even know who that is, but yeah, greed is good is sort of
that movie, remember?
It's been too long for me. But no, greed, it's like one of those like, oh, capitalism lifts people out of poverty. No, it doesn't.
Oh my God.
Charitable acts lift people out of poverty, and that happens in spite of capitalism, not because of it.
Yeah, my favorite is like, if you're anti-capitalist, get rid of your iPhone. And I'm like, what? How that made sense in your brain before you said it?
Yeah.
iPhones don't exist because of capitalism. You can have all kinds of examples of
a new version coming out every 2 months exists because of captivism.
Boom. There's a
That's
difference.
iPhones don't exist because of capitalism.
Thank you, guy. Thank you, Saul. And several people now. Yes, Gordon Gecko. That's him.
Well, so let's touch on Mansion real quick, and then we'll go over to the super chat. So Joe Manchin says he won't support won't support the voting rights bill and will fight to keep the filibuster because he says, here's his quote, good old Manchin, I believe that partisan voting legislation will destroy the already weakening binds of our democracy. And for that reason, I will vote against the For the People Act. Furthermore, I will not vote to weaken or eliminate the filibuster. Basically, he's saying people have different political ideas and power shifts, and I'm against that. Like, he's basically saying, people said a certain thing, and I just want to be on board with my Republican colleagues. So I'm just going to be the fall guy. And
it's interesting that he's tying those two things together as well.
It's hilariously Orwellian. Like, it makes no sense. He's basically saying,
makes no sense.
Hey, people want certain policies, and they've clearly spoken for these policies, and I don't care. I just want my Republican colleagues to be happy. He's putting the plutocracy and the donor class above the needs of the people, which whenever you do that, there's no price to pay. That's why the 100%. Democrats don't fight him, because it's like, well, he's playing the gravy train way, so we don't really care. In fact, we like him because he's our distraction. And
he makes
also
it easier for us. We can blame Joe Manchin and still pretend like we're the good guys. I mean, the plutonymy transcends both parties, right? This is
big
not
time.
People need to realize that the Democrats are as guilty of being part of the plutonymy as the Republicans are. When it comes down to it, they're going to care more about feathering the nest of their wealthy elites than they are about doing anything about the social issues that they say they want to be behind, right? That's just a fact. They've proven it time and time again. And I think Joe Manchin is an easy scapegoat for them because he does this, right? I mean, the filibuster is, as long as that is in play, we are never going to pass any of this progressive legislation. It's that simple.
They got their excuse.
And it infuriates. That's why the $15 minimum wage thing made me so angry, Ron, because here was a chance to actually do something about the minimum wage without having to deal with the filibuster, right? Because with that bill, it was never going to be subject to the filibuster. So we didn't have to worry about it. But Biden wouldn't get behind it then. I mean, and here you had an example where they were blaming the parliamentarian, which is absurd, right? It's like, no, that's not how this works.
They're the most powerful person in America all of a sudden, the parliamentarian, an unelected position that you can ignore when you want to. You can fire when you want to.
Absolutely.
They could have just ignored the parliamentarian. They've done it in the past. Republicans do it all the time. But again, they operate on behalf of the donor class, so they can play hardball.
But so does the Democrat. I mean, Democrats. I have been in DNC meetings where I've seen the parliamentarian just do the bidding of whoever's the person in charge, right? That is why they are there.
When the Democrats are going on
and find what they need to find to like support the position of who's leading the discussion. That's just what they do.
When Democrats are operating at the behest of the donors, they'll go against the parliamentarian. When the parliamentarian is on behalf of the donors, they'll follow the parliamentarian.
They'll get the parliamentarian to find a reason to do what they want to do. Like I'm saying, it's even more nefarious, right? So the parliamentarian is absolutely not neutral. Like the idea that it's, I'm this neutral person, I'm just protecting Robert's Rules of Order is ludicrous. That's absolutely not the case. But, here's the other thing. Why do the progressives in the party give up so much of their power so easily to this guy? If they were willing to play hardball in the same way that Joe Manchin is, they would have more power. It's that simple. You have to be willing, though, to get in the car and drive towards Joe Manchin's car. It's a game of chicken or who's going to bail out first.
But they never will. They never will.
But they never even get in the car.
Yeah, they never even get in the car, and that's by design.
Why is that?
It's because when you're operating at behalf of the donors, there's never a price to pay. If you try to operate on behalf of the people, they either, and I can't wait to read Dennis Kucinich's new book because I think it really unpacks this. You either, 100%. In electoral politics, the way our system is set up, you either, to quote the one Batman movie, you stick around long enough to become the villain or you die a hero. Yeah. That's not true in like the literal sense, but that's applicable. You either just play it their way and don't ruffle any feathers, or eventually they get rid of you. Kucinich is a perfect example of that. Yeah, he's a perfect example of that.
I'd say you're right. I agree with you. And I'd say Bernie is also on a certain level a perfect example of it. Look how they went after him for having the audacity.
And now he's playing the game. And now he's playing the game.
To a certain extent,
so he decided he's playing the game. I mean, they all did. I mean, they all just play the game now. They all, and I think that the present vote stunt pretty much solidified it. I mean, after that,
I agree.
I mean, you can't you
What do
can't
you
really
think?
excuse any of this. It's
No,
a
you
ministry
can't.
of appeasement. You know, you have these politicians,
That's right.
they tweet all these nice things, and they don't act on any of it. And
Right.
I mean, it's
It's
it
bad.
is wow, it is something. And Joe Manchin is just kind of like an ugly face for what the system really is. He's just kind of a red
He's just more
herring.
honest about it. Yeah.
He's a red herring for what the system really is. He's a fall guy. He is despicable beyond
fall guy.
comprehension because he is just a fringe right-wing lunatic. But
Yeah, he's not on the left.
he's really
honestly, it's very
far
strange
from
that
it.
he even runs as a Democrat at this point. It's just kind of like, why is he even? And Cinema, I mean, there's another one. She's right on his tail as far as she hasn't been there long enough to have accumulated the record he has. But on a certain level, I also think she's a little bit more offensive because there was a time when she presented herself as a leftist activist.
Yeah,
right?
I think she's just
Where
a
she
total
was-
grifter. I think she
I
just
agree.
wanted a
Nobody
foot in the
puts their
gate.
positions like that unless they are an absolute. Yeah. I
And
agree.
speaking of which, just because we're on the topic of HR1, I will mention
I
there
do
are a
wanna
lot
talk
of
about
good
that for a
things.
second.
There are a lot of good things in that bill that we should already have, first of all. But
Yeah.
there are a few poison pills for third parties in there.
Right. So
And that's
I was
why-
going
and
to
a
ask
lot
you
of
about.
people-
You read my mind. You read
A
my
lot
mind.
of people got on the Green Party's case, and in reality, they were kind of misrepresenting what the Green Party was saying. The Green Party was not scrap the whole thing. The Green Party was
No,
like,
they said get rid of the poison pills.
get
Yes,
rid
I'm
of the
glad you're saying
poison
that.
pills.
Yeah.
That's
right.
what the
They
Green
didn't
Party
say scrap
said.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, and again, I'm not
And they're
saying
right. They're actually
they're totally
right on
right.
that, though.
They're totally right. I'm not saying the Green Party's perfect, or I haven't disagreed with them before. I certainly have. But in this case, they were 100% right on, and they were being
Right.
very misrepresented constantly. They weren't saying scrap the whole thing. They were saying scrap the poison pills.
Right. So let me ask you this one question because I was wondering about your opinion on this. So they wanted one of the things that HR one does. It gets rid of the block grants. So this is the idea that if a party gets to 5% of the votes in the previous presidential election, they get a block grant, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Rod, which I think is a good thing. I think that 5% is actually too high. I make that lower, if anything. Don't get rid of it. But no third party has ever been able to reach that 5%.
Right.
Which is crazy, right? But that's the case. And I think I think it's worth fighting over just because it does make it worse. But this is something that's never happened, and I don't know that it ever will happen. I think, look, if you're going to say that we want a more robust democracy, and I would like to see a more robust democracy, I think you would, I think most of your audience would. Obviously, having more voices on that debate stage is to everybody's benefit. The two-party system isn't working. It's fundamentally broken because all of the areas in which these two parties agree are where they support the plutonymy, right? These are areas
Totally.
that are very detrimental to the health of the working class in this country. And I would say at this point, capitalism itself, it's imploding, right? If these guys want to save capitalism, and I mean, I don't particularly want to do that, but I think these guys in power do. They consider them capitalists. They need to really reevaluate where they're at in the country. You cannot have 80% of the new wealth being created going to the 1% year after year after year. At some point, you have an entire just obliterated working class that doesn't have expendable income to buy the widgets that you need them to buy if you want to sustain the system, right? And we're headed there. A lot of the folks that were homeless,
we're completely there. I mean, and that's one of the biggest things with Biden, because he doesn't have the foresight to do what needs done, nor does he have any desire to, nor would he surround himself with. He totally doesn't at all. Bernie would have had that foresight. Bernie does have that foresight. He just doesn't. He's not sitting in the chair.
I'm a huge fan of Warren Gunnels. If you folks do not follow Warren Gunnels, you should. I'm just a huge fan of Warren. Just putting that out there.
But I mean, I guess to put a period on the HR1 thing, and then we'll get to Kate's question here. But okay. I think that more people are coming around to third parties. And I think that what they're doing is kind of a preemptive strike. Right. That's a threat. And so what they're doing is kind of a preemptive strike to be like one of the best arguments, especially for people in, quote, safe states. And I put safe in quotes because I don't think there's any. Yeah. Well, I don't think there's anything safe about an electoral college that's based on slave owner math to determine elections. So I think there's nothing
There's
safe
that too,
about
yeah.
that. Whether you live in a blue state or a red state, there's nothing safe when you feel like your vote doesn't count for anything. So I call them decided states, not safe states, but decided
All right,
states.
that's a good way to put it.
The
I
best
agree.
argument for voting third party, especially in a decided state, is, hey, if they get 5%, they're going to get matching funds. So
Right.
you take that argument away, you just make the road that much more distant. You know, it's just that much further. Well, if
Yeah.
you vote that, well, it's no point. They have no chance so I got to
Right.
just vote the lesser of two evils again. Blah blah blah. Well, if they get
I think you're right.
5%, blah blah blah. You take away that incentive, less people are going to vote third party. That's their hope.
I agree. You know, like the couple of times we have seen third parties take larger pieces of the vote, I think you're hitting something right on the nail on the head. How does that phrase go? I think you're right. Listen, there are a group of people and that exist. I have been one of them. I'm giving you my personal opinion right now, where I've looked at these two candidates and I thought to myself, and I'm in a decided state. I'm in California, and I'm like, I don't like any of these candidates. Quite frankly, none of them work for me. However, I do like the idea of having a more robust democracy. So I'm going to vote for the Green Party, not necessarily because I like this particular candidate more than I like the Biden or the Trumps in the world, but because I do want them to get to that 5%. I think that this would help the democracy. So there is a rationale for that. And once you've eliminated, I think you're right on that. You eliminate that rationale because it is threatening. I think in the very least, the Democratic Party sees that. They're probably going to be more affected by that than the Republicans are. You know, they had, was it Ron Johnson the Libertarian guy in the last election? I mean, a lot of the people on the right liked him, but I also think a lot of the people that sort of gravitated towards him were already sort of these independent voters that were disenfranchised by both parties already. So he kind of was scooping up more of that vote. Whereas the Green Party is siphoning off the left of the Democratic Party in a more deliberate fashion.
To an extent. I mean, they also have their own base who is like, I mean, that's why like when people love to
They do now. They do now.
It's like, look, a lot of these
that
people
base came from the Democrats, don't you think? That base? I agree with you.
I think just because they've only been around since the 80s, there's truth in that, because where people had to come from somewhere, right? But I think a lot of people,
I don't know, man. Some people just go poof and they're there.
That's true. I mean, that's true. I mean, maybe I think, well, no, I think in fairness, some people were not participating in electoralism at all until there was the Green Party.
They weren't participating. Yeah.
So
and finally they were like, maybe this is somebody that I can agree with. Yeah, I think that's true. I think non-voters are probably the biggest chunk of the electorate that third parties should go after.
Well, they totally are. And I mean, you can look at example after example where people love to scapegoat the Green Party. You know, you can look at like, Florida in 2000. Like, look, Florida in 2000, first of all, if it wasn't for a Green Party option, most of those voters would have stayed home.
Would have voted. Yeah,
so those people were people who didn't vote.
Were gonna, it's ridiculous.
And also in Florida, aren't you going to blame the thousands of Democrats who voted Republican in that election? If you want to blame voters, look at all the Democrats who voted Republican, not the Green Party people who would have stayed home if there wasn't a green on the ballot. All right, so let's go to Kate's question here.
Okay.
Would love to hear Shahid Buttar on doing a citizens federal referendum and what is actually possible and probable for the next reconciliation. Okay. I would love to hear that too. What
yeah, we should get Shahid.
Reconciliation. I mean, so
I think
maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Well, the reconciliation bill, right? So
isn't that over now?
It is, right, but there'll be another one, right? I think the important part of reconciliation bills is that you can get around the filibuster. I think, is Shahid going to run again? Do we know?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is. I every time he does my show, I try to talk him into running locally, and he won't do it. But here's
the problem, and I have mad props for Shahid.
Yeah, I like Shahid a lot. I like Shahid a lot.
That district is so tough, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the average income in Nancy Pelosi's district, it becomes really obvious to you why it's so hard to dethrone her, right? The average income there is like 140, 150K a year. It's a very wealthy district. It has many billionaires, many millionaires that live in this district. So when you look at the decisions that Nancy Pelosi makes, she is actually making decisions based on who her constituency is, for the most part. So it's going to be really tough to get a progressive into that spot. And unfortunately, it matters more than just the local politics, because she is in a place of power within the Democratic Party. Yeah. And part of the reasons that is the case is because she brings money in. So it's kind of sort of this vicious cycle that we're in. So it's a tough race from start to finish.
Well, and I think if Shahid, you know, and I'm not like, we've had this conversation, him and I, so I'm certainly not like, you know, saying anything out of school. Like him and I have had this, he probably, doing Ron's show again. He's going to do the whole pitch again about running local. Sometimes I want to just do it to shut him up. So Shahid, you know, Shahid knows this, but, you know, and I understand his perspective. I totally respect where the guy's coming from, where, you know, big tech, and he can unpack it way better than I can, because he's way smarter than me. But you know, like big tech is a big issue for him, and one where he wants to exert influence, and clearly somebody can do a lot more in that regard in something like Congress or the Senate even than they could in a city council. I get where he's coming from with that. However, the other side of it, Shahid, it's not like you're on city council in Iowa or Nebraska or wherever. You're in city council right near Silicon Valley. So
it would be influential, yeah.
It would be influential. Okay, I'm gonna pitch him
on that too.
You could pivot to really actually be effective there. Look at what Shama Zawant has done on the national stage from a city council seat. Shahid could do something similar with issues that are important to him, especially since he's already built a national following. So Shahid could still, I think it would take some strategy, and he's a smart dude. He'll figure that out. But I think Shahid could accomplish the things he wants to accomplish in local office. Should he?
I think it could parlay him into a more, I agree. Speaking of which local offices, I don't know if you caught this. Tito Ortiz resigned from Huntington Beach City Council over the weekend. Did you catch any of this?
So I'm not familiar with who that is.
Oh, Tito Ortiz. He is the MAGA guy. He's like a huge Trump supporter, but he's an MMA fighter. He was on The Apprentice. So he won, and he's just an anti-everything, anti-masker, huge MAGA guy, like all of that.
And
so
he was on city council in where?
Well, hello, Hypatia here.
Hypatia's here.
Huntington Beach. So when you're elected to city council in Huntington Beach, they rotate the mayor position, so you serve as mayor pro tem. It's kind of an interesting setup they have. So he was also mayor pro tem. What I find fascinating about this is guy is such a snowflake. So he's been going after. There's a Huntington Beach school board member named Gina Clayton,
who I've interviewed. After a school board member.
Yes, badly. And it wasn't just, it was a bunch of Proud Boys that were showing up at the Huntington Beach school board meetings. And these are guys that don't even have kids. They don't even have kids in the district, right? Calling her a Marxist, threatening her on social media. And he actually went after her.
Is she a Marxist? I like her already.
Yeah, I wish she's pretty leftist, I would say, but she's, it's a school board position. She's not there to govern based on her personal politics.
No,
and I'd say most of that school board is actually Republican, like self-identified Republican.
Well, Huntington Beach. But
exactly. So the fact that she's able to get elected in Huntington Beach, if she's a leftist, it says something about her abilities, I think, personally. And I think she's very good at what she does. But the thing is that he named her, attacked her, and went after her. And what was she guilty of? Telling him that he didn't get an exemption from the school rules simply because of who he was. He wanted to be able to send his kids to in-school learning, in-person learning, and not have them wear a mask. And so the school board was like, absolutely not. If you don't want your kids to not wear a mask, they have to do virtual learning. That's just the rules. You don't get an exemption from the rules. So this went back and forth for a bit. And he tried to use his kids as pawns. I mean, folks, if they're interested in following the story, can go look up some of the videos that his girlfriend posted on Instagram. It was just outrageous, like just gross. Anyway, he ended up resigning over the weekend because he was losing that battle. And he sent out this press release in which he actually went after Gina. Clayton said that he was the and I was like, dude, you're such a snowflake. You're
this
so
school board bully
Yeah,
You know
I'm like,
those,
no, dude.
You know those school board
Like,
intimidators with their whole trying to help kids learn and their vicious book fairs and
right.
their
It's
I don't think
insane.
that's a
It's
thing
insane.
anymore. Actually, I think I
No,
just
but
dated
here's a
myself.
guy that is so
That's something they had
freaking
when I was a kid.
self-absorbed. He's so self-absorbed, right? He wants everything his way.
But that's
or
a
the highway.
hilarious cell phone. I mean,
It
I'm
is a-
just
I
I'm just
agree.
hearing
I
about
agree.
this now from you, but
Yeah.
that's a hilarious stuff. This school board person just well now I'm not. You know, the only way this can come full circle.
Now I'm going to
and
resign from being the mayor pro tem. I'm going to give up all my power. Yeah, I mean, well,
So-
it's because my kids cannot go to school wearing a mask or do virtual. Your options are both viable, Tito. Get a grip. Seriously,
Well-
get a fucking grip.
The only way this can come full circle is if a Marxist replaces him. They need to find a Marxist to replace him on city council, which would just be hilarious. I don't know if such a thing exists in Huntington Beach. Maybe I'm sure it does. I'm sure there's left-wing people in Huntington. Of course, there are.
No, you know, and really the way that Gina's been attacked is pretty vicious. Like there's an ex-Proud Boy who lives in Orange County, who now runs a Telegram channel called Proud Goy. Yes, you heard me correctly. He's a neo-Nazi. Let's just call it what it is.
Wow.
Incredibly racist guy. But he was showing up with Baked Alaska, another super racist white supremacist, at the school board.
Baked Alaska? Who is that a
Yeah,
person?
Yeah, Baked Alaska was like one of the first guys that got banned from Twitter for his Nazi shit. And he had a meltdown in a fast food parking lot. If you have not seen this video, Ron, you need to see it. It's freaking hilarious.
Okay, so I've
his
never
meltdown
heard
was
of
actually
that.
bigger. Remember the chick that changed herself to the Twitter? What was her name? She just ran for office.
No, I
Where she
mean
got banned?
we're exposing the fact that I try to limit my Twitter exposure because I have no idea what you're talking about, and it's like I can only spend so
That
much
crazy
time.
Like Trumpy right winger person. She's a
Yeah,
total
see,
fascist,
when I
racist.
really spend time, like when I spend too much time on Twitter, I literally feel like I'm just inhaling poison, and
Yeah.
I need to, and not just Twitter, any social media. So I need to, for my own mental well-being, keep it at arm's length.
All right, I feel you.
My personal rule for myself is I try to only go on when I want to tweet something. No, I'm not saying I try to, I'm not saying I have an ignorance is bliss stance. I try to inform myself every day. I pay attention to the news every day. I use Twitter to help with that purpose. But, getting in the weeds with, these
With Nazis, is not
crazy
your thing.
personalities is I can't, like, I can't.
I can't believe I don't remember. She ran for office and won the primary, but she's just a lunatic. Anyway, the guy had an epic meltdown. I actually have video of him where he's literally saying, we're the real Proud Boys, the 1488 Proud Boys. And if folks don't know what 1488 is, that's a neo-Nazi phrase. It's the 14 words about having white kids.
Yeah,
and
what
88
is
it's Heil Hitler.
what is the thing about the number 8? Like, what is? Because
Heil
I know
Hitler.
that's okay.
H is the eighth
letter.
in the
Okay.
yeah, HH. So it's a way of saying
Okay.
Heil Hitler that's disguised. So if you see any way, like in fact the Nationalist Socialist Party, which is the Nazi party here in the United States, they use 88 on their all their social, what's left of their social media.
So
Also on
I
their
didn't
website.
I didn't learn that until
You'll see that in a tattoo. Okay, so you'll see this in
I
tattoos
didn't learn that
sometime.
until recently. When I first saw it online, I thought it was a casino thing.
No.
And then I learned what it was. I'm like, oh, that's
Well,
disgusting.
hang on. That's actually understandable. 8 is supposed to be a lucky number, right? In some
Right. Well, that's what. Well, I think like it's like the 7s is the thing. Like 777. That's a thing on a.
Well, that's true if you're playing
Unlike a chuck. What's the thing called? The slot machines.
slot machine, yeah, versus
So like
craps or
7s
something. Yeah.
is. And anyway, all right. So yeah, I mean, it's important to kind of know this stuff. So when you see it online, you know what you're seeing. But I didn't learn that until kind of recently.
So it's not shocking that they had that white White Lives Matter crap that happened in Huntington Beach a couple weeks ago, where I filmed Nazis fighting with people. The guy had one guy had an absolute swastika tattooed on his arm and was proud of it. He punched an Asian guy.
Did he have some 8s? And he's like, this isn't because I enjoy casinos.
No,
That's not what these
did
8s
not.
are for. I'm a
He got
Nazi.
I'm a Nazi. He got arrested, which made it very easy to dox his ass because, I got the arrest record, so I know what his name is. And he had a very extensive record. You had the KKK Grand Dragon guy who showed up at this thing. Also,
that guy is the Grand Dragon in California.
For the California Ku Klux Klan, believe it or not,
they have multiple wizards. They have
multiple. Yes.
I like how they call themselves wizards. There's
weird.
some hate organization that they have these designations of like of children playing a castle game. Yeah. Like you're the wizard. Anyway, all right. Anyway, Jonathan, what's up? Thank you for the super chat contribution. When's the next garden party? I don't know what that means. Tina, what does that mean?
We filmed with Jen when she was here. We filmed an episode down in my That was fun.
That's right. Hopefully soon.
Soon. Okay, now that we've been vaccinated and Jen's gonna come visit.
Yes. Yeah. And she's doing better, right? She's feeling better?
She's much better. Yeah. I think she's almost up to speed actually. She ended up going to the Mayo Clinic and getting
She's a long hauler. That's what that's called, right? She's a long hauler.
Yeah.
And they're treating that now.
They're treating that now. Yeah.
Out how to treat that.
They figured out what the problem was about 3 weeks ago, and she's getting direct treatment for that. So she's hella better. It's amazing, actually.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, Tina, she was having a hard time with that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Kate. Tina, where can everybody learn more about you?
Has it been an hour already?
It's been over that.
Okay. All right. So I guess it's time to go.
Tina, do I have your permission to end the show? I should have.
You do. I love you, Ron. All right. So best place. Well, we should plug our show, Academy Refugees. Yes. I'm about to put up the 3rd episode probably tomorrow, actually, which we talked about propaganda. So this is basically Ron and I doing what we're doing here today, more or less. Embodying some philosophy.
More just philosophical and thematic.
Right.
We don't really talk about news per se, although we bring it in when it's applicable. And it's because we both have former lives as academics.
Right.
Retired, we're retired academics.
So it's I think it'll be an interesting niche because not a lot of people have that background or the interest in talking about it. And we both do. So we talked about doing this a few months ago. We made it happen. It's my favorite project I'm working on now just because.
Aw, yay.
Just saying. Then also, of course, I work at Status Quo. So I do reporting for them. And then my podcast, District 34, which is California-based politics. So just stuff that happens in California. I also interview progressive candidates from out of state. I will interview any progressive that's running for office because I feel that they don't get enough opportunity to be interviewed by media. And that's helpful to get. I think it grows our democracy to have more viewpoints given that are against the plutonymy per se, against, maybe supporting, maybe against isn't the right word to use. Maybe it is, but folks that aren't necessarily. Okay, folks that are standing up for everybody else, Okay.
At this point,
I mean, I could use something worse, honestly.
Right? No kidding, right?
So, so that's about it.
Right on, everybody. Check it out. Follow Tina. Check out her stuff at Status Quo and 34th District Pod and Academy Refugees. I think we still got to get up
Spotify.
On the iTunes.
Yeah.
We're on Spotify right now.
We're on Spotify right now.
Yeah, we should be on iTunes soon. Again, it's a very new project. We're just like 3 episodes deep. And the first 2, we were doing them like remote. And so we were still figuring out the footing of it all. But check that out. It's a fun philosophy-based podcast. And they're just fun conversations. We have a lot of fun with it. Our last topic was propaganda. We break down what propaganda actually is, blah, blah, blah. And then our first episode was just an introductory episode where we kind of shared about our past lives as academics and like why we left. And Tina shares her story, why she left. I share my story, why I left. We exchanged just some kind of fun.
Which might be like a surprise
stories.
For a lot of people to hear.
It might be interesting to hear. I mean, because we didn't know each other's story before the episode. Like
exactly. We specifically did that. Yeah.
We found out that each other had a past in academia. We decided to do this podcast. So we never knew why the other had left. Yeah. So we said, well, let's just find out on air. Like you'll tell me your story, I'll tell you mine. That's how we'll introduce the show. And so that was a fun one. Then we did epistemology. Now we did propaganda. And we got a lot of fun topics coming up. So yeah,
I think we
check it out.
I think we do Plato's The Republic next.
We got to do that, especially with some of the stuff we talked about today. So yeah, check that out. And in the meantime, you guys know the drill. So Hypatia gets the pet shout out today. I always do when my panelist has a pet, they get the shout out. So Hypatia, who made an appearance earlier, Hypatia says wolf.
She did, and now of course she's not here.
Well, she says wolf. We got it. But she says wolf. Lucy says meow. Tina says peace. I say peace. And also love, mutual aid, general strike. See you tomorrow. Peace.